Hey guys, this is Veerashkaran. So today we'll talk about there are two different HTML methods, both are similar, like put and patch. So let's talk about what is the difference between the put and patch methods. So nowadays, mostly we talk about the different HTTP operations like get, put, post, delete. We also have similar to put something called a patch operation. So most of the interviews, the interviewer might ask, what is the difference between the put and patch method? So put and patch both are for the update, but what exactly is the difference between them? So put, for example, I have a customer data. I wanted to update the entire record or the entire object into the database. So we can use the put operations. Let me tell you in a different way. For example, I wanted to update the customer name and the customer address, and there are a couple of other fields. So what happens in the database? It is going to update the entire row. So that is nothing but put or update operation. Whereas patch, so we just need to patch for certain fields or a particular column. So we can use the patch operation. Assume that I have a request object. So I'm not going to pass all the fields. I just want to update the name, or let's say I just want to update the customer address. So let's say the customer is residing in Hyderabad right now, and now the customer is moving to the Bangalore. I just want to update the address. So let's say I'm changing from Hyderabad to Bangalore. So I don't want to update the entire data in the database. So I just need to update a single column. So we can use the patch operations. So let me show you the example so that you will understand better. So now go to the IntelliJ. So I already implemented the program. I'm just going to walk through what is the difference between the put and patch implementation. So first, let's talk about the put implementation. So assume that I have a request object. So that's nothing but the customer update request. So let's see what is there in the customer update request. So the customer update has, let's say, the name, address, and account type. Account type can be, it may be savings or the current account, right? So now, if you see the request, basically we are going to pass the account number and also the request body, which has the customer name, customer address, and the account type. That's nothing but the savings or current account. So now I have the implementation in my service layer. So that's a customer service implementation. So let's check that implementation for the update operation. So I'm going to the update customer method. So if you see here, so first I'm trying to fetch the account number from the database using the repositories. So if the account is exist in the database, so then I need to save everything into the database. What and all we are going to save into the database, basically. So now if you see here, so we are going to save the certain fields like a name, address, account type, and also in addition to that, I also added a couple of other fields for auditable, nothing but the who updated the this particular data and when it was updated. So for that, I have the updated user and the updated timestamp. So now, since we have to pass the entity object, so to perform the CRUD operations, so I mean to save the data into the database, so I'm going to pass this particular customer entity in the save method, and finally we return the entity as the response object. So once we get the customer entity as a response, I'm going to convert or the transform from entity to the response object, because finally we have to return the customer response. So the customer response and the request both are different. So let's say the request has a couple of fields and the response has a different fields. So now I'm going to transform. So it's a manual way of transform. So there are other ways where we can transform from entity to the response object. We can use the mappers, and there are some ready-made APIs also available. For now, I'm just going to use the manual way of transformation. So here the customer response, I'm setting from entity to the response object. Finally, my response will return back to the user. So first, let's talk about this particular put, how it works. So my application is already running. So let's go to the Postman. So now, if you go to the put operation, so here we have a update customer method. So let's take this one only. So I'm going to choose the method as a put method. So the URL is a local host and it is running on port 9001. I have a context path and the mapping URL. This is my path variable account number. It's ending with a 2. So I have a couple of fields. Basically, I have a name, address. Let's add the account type. So let's say savings, right? So now I already have this particular account number. Now I wanted to update certain fields, nothing but the name, address, account type. So now, before even we make a put request, let's make a get call and see what is the data that we have. So this is my get operation. Now we can see here. Here it has a Shankar and address is a Bangalore and account typing is savings, and we have an account number. So now let's change these fields. Let's say Veera and address, let's say Mumbai, let's say current account, right? So let's verify whether my enum type is the account. Basically, let me check account type, right? Yeah, so here I have a savings and current account. So now let's make a put request. So I got a bad request. Looks like something is missing here. So account type, yeah, account. Sorry, yeah. So here comma is missing. Let's add the comma and send it now. Now we can see. Now this particular account is updated with the new details. The name is a Veera and address is a Mumbai and account type is the current, and the account number is remains same because we cannot update the account number, right? I'm just updating the details for this particular account. Now, if you want to make a get call, you can just make a get call and see the result. It remains same. Whatever we updated, we got the same response. Assume that now I just want to update only the address. Let's say I just want to update only the address. I'm going to remove all other fields. Let's say I just want to make it as a Chennai. Now just hit the request and see. So I got some exception. Yeah, because I think there is one validation is missing. For now, what I will do is I'll keep this account type also. Okay, so let's make it as a savings and change this address to Chennai. Right. So now if you observe the result, what is happening? I'm not, in the request, I'm not passing all the fields. So let's say the name, I'm not passing the name. So what happened in the response? So the response, we are getting the name as a null and address is a Chennai, account type is a savings, right? And the account number remains same. Now, if you see, since I'm not passing the name in the JSON key, so we are getting as a null. So what is happening? It is trying to update the entire row, and finally we are getting as a null, right? So now let's say, I don't want to update the entire row. I just want to update the address, or I just want to update the name, right? So other fields should not make it as a null, right? So that is a possible with the patch operation. So let's go to the patch implementation, how I implemented it. Go to the controller. I have a patch mapping. So we have annotation called @patch mapping. The path is, I'm passing the account number. So nothing to worry about what we are going to produce now. By default, we produce the JSON in the response. So now I'm going to return the customer response, and the request I'm passing the account number and the same update request, whatever that we do for the put. So the same thing I have added for the patch as well. Now go to the implementation for patch. So now we can see here we have a patch customer. So I'm going to pass the account number and under the customer update request. So first I'm trying to see whether that account is exist in the database or not. If not exist, I'm simply throwing some exceptions. So this is not standardized for now, simply throwing some exception. And now what I do is, so I'm going to check whether, there are multiple ways for the patch implementation. So one of the way we have org Spring utils. So in the string utils in the Spring framework, so we have something called has length method. I'm going to check whether the name has given in the request or not. If it has given, so definitely the length of the name would it should be greater than 0, right? So I'm checking whether it has a length or not. If it doesn't has a length, so I'm not going to do anything. If it has a length, I'm getting the name from the request object and setting the name to the entity, right? So similarly, we need to perform the validations for other fields. For address, I'm checking the has length. If it has a length, I'm setting the address. If not, I'm not setting it, right? See, even similarly, even for the account type also, right? So now, if at all, we get the need update as a true. So what we just do is, so I'm going to write a condition if need update is a true, then perform the save operation, right? So if the need update is required, if it is a true, means something I have to update. So by default, I'm just setting the auditable fields, nothing but the updated user and updated timestamp. And I had to pass this particular customer entity to store the data into the customer table, right? So finally, once we store the data into the database, so we get an entity as a response from the save method. So I'm going to transform from entity to the response object, right? So this is the implementation. So since I made the change, so let's restart the server or the application. So once the application is restarted, so let's perform the patch operation and see the result. So now what I will do is, so I'll just add a name here, name, and also change this method to the patch operation. Let's see, the name is Veera Shankara, and address, let's remove it, and even the account type also, let's remove it, right? So now I'm just passing only the name, but I'm performing the patch operation. So I'm just going to patch only the name field. I don't want to patch, I don't want to update the entire object, entire customer object, right? So now the application is started and it is running on port 9001. Let's make a hit. Now we can see in the response. So it just updated only the name. It is not updated the other fields, right? So now I hope you understand the difference between the put and the patch. So put is going to update the entire row, whereas the patch is going to just patch only the specific column or the specific field. So that is the differences between the put and patch. Hope you guys are understand. So please do subscribe my channel.